Welcome to Off the Grid, a podcast for small business owners who want to leave social media without losing all their clients.
Let's go off the grid. Okay. Let's go off the grid. Okay. I know that you really want to put your phone away. Yeah. Let's go off the grid.
Hello and welcome to Off the Grid, a podcast about creating a thriving business and life with no or minimal social media presence. I'm your host, Amelia Freebie, and today I am here to say welcome to our Season 5 finale. In this episode, I am wrapping up our 5 days of Season 5 experiment with the final piece of your 2025 marketing toolkit. So far this week, I have told you about the 3 tools that I believe can help launch and grow any business in 2025. Those were email marketing, podcast guesting, and relationship marketing. I had 3 great guests on to talk about these strategies. And for me, these are like your marketing fundamentals. I think that one or more of these strategies can build a really strong marketing foundation for a business of any kind. Today, we're going in a slightly different direction and we're exploring 2025 marketing trends because I don't know about you, but for me personally, while I do think it's super important to build that strong marketing foundation I just mentioned, I also think it's important to have a little fun and also maybe pay attention to what other folks are doing and plug into some of the trends happening in our spaces from time to time. I mean, even though I'm off social media, that doesn't mean I have my head in the sand, right? I love following marketing trends. I love integrating new and different strategies into my seasonal marketing experiments. So I don't think that your 2025 marketing toolkit would be complete without talking about some of the trends and changes that we're seeing for the year ahead in the business and marketing space. So in this episode, as we're wrapping up Season 5, I have invited a return guest to join me and forecast a few trends for the marketing year ahead. Before I introduce that guest, I do, of course, want to make sure that you know about the free Leaving Social Media Toolkit. This is a free resource where I have gathered my 3 most popular tools to help you step back or away from social media. Those tools include a 5-step plan for leaving any social platform, my list of 100 ways to share your work and life without social media, and a very cool database for tracking creative marketing experiments. Some of these trends could go right into that database. So if you're interested, please head to offthegrid.fun/toolkit or just jump down to the show notes to grab a link and get the free toolkit today. And if listening to this makes you realize that you would really like more community and some additional courses and teaching resources around everything that we're mentioning, of course, I also want to invite you to join me in the Interweb, which is our annual membership where we put into practice all the things that I talk about on Off the Grid. The doors to the Interweb are open right now and they close on Sunday, January 12th. So if you're interested, again, in courses and community and more Off the Grid goodness, I will just send you right to the show notes, right to offthegrid.fun/interweb to learn more and join us before the doors close on the 12th. And they'll be closed at least until the spring, potentially even until the fall. I am not quite sure what my marketing schedule will be this year. So if you want in, now is your moment. Okay, now let me tell you about today's guest, and we will dive in to our 2025 marketing trends. Amanda Laird is the founder and principal strategist at Slow and Steady. Over the past 15 plus years, she has led countless communications projects from concept through launch for small and large businesses, nonprofit organizations, and solopreneurs. As a former holistic nutritionist, Amanda is also an advocate for reproductive health and wellness. She was the host of the Heavy Flow podcast from 2017 to 2020 and is the author of the award-winning book, Heavy Flow: Breaking the Curse of Menstruation. Amanda lives with her husband and young daughter in Toronto, where she can usually be found cooking, taking long walks listening to prestige TV recap podcasts, doing the Times crossword, or obsessing over flowers. Today, Amanda is here to forecast 4 marketing trends that all of us might want to pay attention to in 2025. Let's go ahead and dive into this episode. Hi, Amanda. Welcome back to Off the Grid.
Hi, Amelia. Thanks for having me.
last time you were here was pretty much a year ago now, and we were talking about doing just enough marketing. And if folks haven't heard that conversation, I highly recommend they go back and listen. Like after you finish this one, immediately go queue up that one. You're going to want to learn even more from Amanda. But for today, we're taking a slightly different approach to marketing, and we're going to talk about some marketing trends that you have predicted for 2025. So you sent this amazing email at the end of last year that had all these trends in it. And I was sitting over here trying to like painstakingly figure out how to talk about trends, figure out if I could do any trend spotting. And your email landed in my inbox. And I was like, thank God someone else did this. So I invited you to come on and tell us about the trends that you have spotted. And I'm grateful because then I didn't have to figure all that out on my own. I'm not a very good trend spotter somehow.
Neither am I. Okay. I mean, I don't really consider myself a trend expert. I'm not like a futurist, but I've read the room. I can see the writing on the wall. This is what I'm thinking about.
Part of the reason I also wanted to talk to you about trends is because I think we both have a similar approach to trends, which is that we think that your like marketing foundation comes first. Like, what are your foundational channels? What's your foundational messaging? We want all of that in place. And then we can go to the trends for like a little something fun and new. We can bring in something that's more of the moment. But if I know that like email's my primary channel, great. Now I can integrate a discussion about a trend or a type of trendy text content that I want to do in my email, right? But the way we think about trends is not that we are all wholesale pivoting our entire marketing strategy to the trends of the year. What we're doing is now that we've had this whole week of season 5 talking about some of my suggested fundamental marketing strategies for your year ahead, as those are implemented, you can use the trends to just give that little surprise, delight, joy, fun, playfulness.
Think of it like fashion. You are not going to throw out everything in your closet because now you're into mob wife aesthetic, right?
Yeah.
But maybe we're on Poshmark looking for the leopard print blouse.
Yeah. So let's talk about these trends. Just for listeners, I'm going to tell you the 4 trends we're going to unpack together today, and then we'll go into each one. So the first trend is going to be all about AI. We're going to talk about the ways that we're seeing AI in the online business and marketing space and what we think there will be even more of in the year ahead. Then we'll talk about some big shifts in the social media landscape. So obviously, I am semi-famously not on social media, but Amanda is much more social media agnostic than I am and works with clients on social media strategy. So we're going to talk about some of the things happening in various social media spaces and apps and how we think that will develop in 2025. Then we will dive into all things Substack and talk about what's going on that platform. And we will end talking about some IRL trends, the way we're seeing things move back in person this year. So those are the 4 trends we're going to get into together. And Amanda, will you take it away for us by telling us a little bit about the trends you're seeing for AI in 2025? How's this showing up in our online businesses this year?
Okay, so AI. I mean, 2025 is not the dawn of AI. This has been something trending for quite some time now. And when I think about AI, there's actually a number of other little buckets, within AI that I'm thinking about as a business owner, that I'm thinking about with my clients, that I'm looking at. I'm also going to preface this by saying, I am by no means an expert in AI. And up until somewhat recently, I thought I could just not think about it and that it would be fine. So here's kind of what I'm thinking about from AI. I think ongoing interrogation and reflection on the ethics and how we use it as small business owners and as creatives. I think something that is going to be ever more important and evolving is creating AI use policies in our businesses. AI use disclosure, I think, if we are operating with our values, trying to create an ethical business as much as we can. We need to have these clear conversations about how are we using AI, how are we talking to our clients about AI, and also just looking at ourselves, like what are our personal boundaries around using AI, right? Like, am I comfortable using AI to create a set of new headshots for myself?
Whoa. That never occurred to me.
Like, I see it.
Yeah.
I see it, right? Personally, no, thank you. I don't need my face to be training AI. Like, that's not for me. But, I am comfortable using it as a thought partner in my own business. Am I comfortable using it in my work with clients? No, not yet. And that might evolve. So there's that part of it. And then, of course, I feel like I can't talk about AI without acknowledging the environmental impacts of it. Something I read was that for every 500 words that ChatGPT generates, that's 3 bottles of water. So there are real impacts on the environment that I think if we are considering ourselves values-based and ethical businesses that we should be thinking about. And so there's that piece of it, which is kind of the operations piece. But then I also started to learn more about this idea of AI-powered search. And I know in the US and Canada, I'm based in Canada, so what's currently available is a little bit different. Things are changing, things are coming down the pipeline, but tools like Perplexity or Search GPT, which are currently already in play in the US, aren't available in Canada just yet, or may not be. But one thing that we do know, and this actually came to me through a client, and they had done some market research. And in the market research, they learned, because we were working on search engine optimization, that was the project. And they did some market research. And in that market research, they learned that their end customers were using tools like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini for search. And that really blew my mind. And that's when I was like, okay, this is something that I can no longer just pretend I don't have to think about, because this really changes our landscape, right? And if I put on my traditional public relations and marketing hat back on, AI and the AI tools that we are using, we have to start considering that as an audience or a stakeholder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think then I don't even know that my brain can actually contain that, because that really feels like we're in outer space when I think about that. But it's true, right? If consumer behaviors are changing, people use ChatGPT for search, even though it is not a search engine and it's not actually designed or optimized for search. And at least at the time that we're recording this conversation, in Canada, ChatGPT doesn't even use live search. It is based on a large language model based off of a data set that has an end date, right? So anything that exists on the internet after a specific date, it is not even looking at. It's not doing a live search of the internet. And so that means something. And it also just points to this shift in changing behavior, which means that AI optimization is now something that has to be on our radar, similar to the way that we had to start to think about search engine optimizations. If I want to show up in search engines, I need to do XYZ. And now we have to start thinking about, how do we show up in AI-generated search or in these AI tools?
Yeah, this is so interesting and so multi-layered, right? So just to recap a bit for listeners, where I heard you start was sort of more around like the way that different AI tools can impact and help us optimize our workflows, like the work that we do, right? So we can work with ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, or for me, like other services built on those tools. So I've talked about before, like in my podcast studio practice, we use a tool called Cast Magic that creates show notes and generates transcripts. Like that is powered by ChatGPT as far as I'm aware. And so there are a lot of different tools we might be using. I've also used some of the AI integrations inside of Canva before to help with color picking and various things. So like there are a lot of ways that AI is integrated into tools we might already be using or that we might seek out new AI powered tools to optimize the work that we're already doing. And I love that you brought to us that like a trend around that is that we're probably going to see or want to see more people disclosing how they're using these AI tools and what you're doing with them. And this definitely comes up for me in the podcasting space because I have had multiple client inquiry calls in 2024 with people who are like, I'm pretty sure this was all done by AI and they told me it was a person, but it didn't feel like a person. And I think that that's really, it feels bad. I mean, it's maybe a shady business practice. I don't know what's actually happening, right? But on the receiving end of that, if you've hired a service provider and then you feel like they're just giving you AI output, that's really problematic, I think. And so that type of transparency, disclosure, and having like just clear kind of ethics around what you do and don't do with AI and being able to share those with people, I think is really important. So for instance, at Softer Sounds, we're very clear, like we use AI to generate transcripts. That is the case, but we don't use it to edit your audio or write your show notes. Like real humans are doing that. And those are actually like people on the website. You can go look at their pictures. You can go to their website. It's like, I didn't used to foreground that as much, but I've had to because of the rise of AI. Like it really just has shifted what people are asking me. And so I'm definitely loving that you're kind of focusing on within our operations, we're going to see more AI powered tools that we might be using, and we're going to see more of a need for disclosure around that.
And I think where that dovetails into marketing is from like a messaging perspective, right? And so I think we're going to start to see, right? Like, so for example, you shared with Softer Sounds, that is now in marketing, we call it like a POD, right? Like a point of differentiation that real humans write your show notes, right? And that is a choice, that is an operational a business choice and a business values and probably personal values choice that you have made. And what that's also now going to mean is that that's going to start to find its way into your marketing messaging, right? Like if you are making, and I think whether you are making a conscious choice to use AI or making a conscious choice to not use AI in specific ways, whichever way your chips are falling, I think is going to start to impact how you talk about what you do. Because you're either going to have to explain why you use AI and why that's the better choice, and you're going to have to explain why you're not and why that's the better choice, right?
Yeah. And I just think this is so important for service providers. And if you had told me when I started Softer Sounds 3.5 years ago or whatever it is now, that my website would say things like podcast editing done by real humans, I would have been like, LOL, what is a real human? Like that. I'm like, it's obviously not done by robots. Like I would never have used that language. And in rewriting and rebranding the studio over the past few months, like that language is coming in. It is language that I'm using now. I think I use words like thoughtful humans, but still it's really becoming more human centric as opposed to like an AI centric method. And then I think also for our like product-based business owners out there, we're seeing, web shops flooded with AI-generated descriptions and comments.
Yeah.
And so it's not just our service-based business owners that have to be thoughtful about like, how do we bring this in? Are you going to continue to choose to write your own descriptions of products? Are you going to differentiate by having like these really clever, smart, personalized descriptions or newsletters? Or are you going to integrate more AI and like really cut back on your time putting those things in? Or I think there's even more ways to like automate email flows through AI, especially in the product-based space that are evolving. And so how we use AI impacts all of us. And it can become, I think you're so right, Amanda, like it's going to become a POD, a point of differentiation, that you use it or you don't. You're going to have to talk about why you chose what you chose. And I think there's just like a lot that we're going to see evolve in the next year around that. And then I also wanted to like highlight, circle, underline what you said about AI powered search and how we are going to have to, like, that's kind of the second big AI trend you brought to us around how we're going to have to start to think about AI like its own search engine. And, I think that in some ways, it feels like a sea change to me, but not like totally different sea that we're swimming in, right? Like SEO is all based on Google, right? When we say SEO, we just mean that we're all trying to please Daddy Google and get Google to show our search results. And it's pretty opaque what works and what doesn't. And they can change it at any time. And we have no control over this. I mean, I think the same is true around like people who are searching in ChatGPT. We have no clue. Like they can change it anytime.
I just want to shout out to my friend and mentor, Avery Swartz, who has literally taught me everything I know about AI. And what I learned from Avery is that, at least for now, it looks like AI is valuing the same things as SEO. So quality content from quality sources, big name, web authority, large news outlets, Wikipedia, LinkedIn apparently has a really good domain authority, for better or for worse. And so for right now, at least on the day that we are recording this episode, because we know things change quickly, implementing really good SEO strategies to optimize your website should help you perform favorably in AI-powered search. But this is ever evolving. So who knows? We could have this conversation again next January, and it could be like, yeah, so remember when everything we said turned out to not be true, and now you have to do XYZ instead of ABC. Who knows? But for now, that's what is looking like is a thing.
Yeah. I love what you're saying. Avery has shared around like it seems to be using roughly the same metrics of SEO, but we don't even truly know what those metrics are on any given day. And so I have always treated SEO in my business as like something that I learned some basics of, and then I just pretend it's like magic fairy dust I can't control. Like, because I just feel like making a bet on something where this tech entity has all the power, I just can't do it anymore. Like, I feel so burned from all of it.
I agree. And, if there are like solo service-based creative business owners that are listening to this who are like, their brain is starting to like seep out of their ears and like you're really starting to freak out, I think like, let's take a deep breath. Because for the average solopreneur, I actually don't think that this is that big of a deal, right? Like for me personally, in my business at Slow and Steady, I don't give a fuck about AI optimization, honestly.
Yeah.
And I don't even try that hard with search engine, because what I know to be true for my business is that people don't find me through search. That's just not what drives the awareness and the attraction in my business. So I'm not that concerned with it for myself and for the types of solo, super teensy tiny service-based businesses that I work with. I would say ask yourself, is search a priority? Is that making up a bulk of your awareness building? Do people find you through search? I think it's important for if you have a brick and mortar business, if you are a local business, if you are, a practitioner that sees like a wellness practitioner, a naturopath or a nutritionist or somebody like that who sees people in person, right? Where that Google local business or Google business is really a high priority for you, then I think probably you should keep AI on your radar, like AI search and AI optimization on your radar. And the third AI trend that we haven't even talked about too is that a lot of these tools are now rolling out paid ads on the platform too. So what is that going to mean too? And again, if you're not buying ads on Google and that's not a big part of your marketing pie right now, I don't think it has to be.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice just sort of check for anyone hearing this and spiraling out, or just who, like, when you hear AI in business, panics and triggers your flight or freeze response. I think Off the Grid is becoming known for like the return to relationships. It's becoming a pillar of, wow, I talk about marketing here. And when that is the case, if we have these creative centered, community centered businesses, then I find that traffic-based strategies are just not the ones that we're turning to, and they're not the ones that we're using to find our definitions of success. And if you don't know what I mean when I say traffic-based strategies, just go listen to yesterday's Best Of episode with Michelle Warner. She totally breaks down traffic marketing versus relationship marketing. And if you run a traffic marketing business or you want to do a lot of traffic marketing for your business, quite honestly, like there's a million podcasts out there who will teach you how to do it. And Off the Grid is probably not so much one of them. It's not the focus of my strategies, and I don't claim to be that person. So I think it's just always so good for us to check in when we're thinking about trends. Like, is this a trend that I need to know about, care about, implement, right? And for some of us, that answer might be yes. You may be interested in using some AI tools in your operations, but you're like, great, Amanda and Amelia, I just heard everything you said about AI-powered search, and I am going to immediately flush that down the toilet, erase it from my brain. Great. You may not need to know about it, but maybe you do, and now you do. So I think let's wrap our talk about the first trend about AI here and move into some of the big shifts happening in the social media landscape, because there are some things that have already happened that I think are going to impact how social media works this year. And I'm curious, Amanda, what are the trends that you're spotting around all these changes on social media apps?
I mean, let's talk when social media isn't changing, first of all, right?
Yeah, truly.
But I do think that over the last year and in this coming year, there are going to be some big shifts. So X has really just devolved because it is really just made a hard turn to the right. They let go with a lot of their policies around content moderation, and now it's just a cesspool of incels and mega Doge boys, essentially. And a lot of people left and then started moving over to other platforms. So Threads, which is also like one of the big boys, right? Because it's owned by Meta. Threads obviously rising in popularity, Blue Sky. And then there's just all kinds of other little kind of micro blogging platforms that are kind of filling that Twitter void. Blue Sky, I think, is the big one, right? And that, I think Blue Sky saw the most growth. And so as of today, I'm not personally on Blue Sky, but I did have this thought last night, like, okay, I should at least sign up and take a look around, see what's happening there. But what I think is, as those users grow, right? Okay, now brands who maybe got a lot of traction on Twitter are probably going to start looking at Blue Sky and coming up with a Blue Sky strategy. And then what does that mean once the brands are there? What does that mean for Blue Sky's revenue model? What are they going to start doing? Promoted posts and ads and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I feel similarly around Blue Sky. I mean, I also have not been on X or Twitter in many, many, many years, but did watch the Blue Sky, I don't know, transition evolution over the past year with interest. My partner has been very active on Twitter in the online chess community because they have a full-time job in chess. And when the shift to Blue Sky started, like over a year ago, they went and claimed the handle of the biggest chess website on Blue Sky.
Oh, yes.
And so they have the Chess.com Blue Sky handle, and chess.com had to get a different handle on Blue Sky than they have everywhere else because, shout out to JJ, they really had some marketing foresight there and wit and squatted on that handle.
Chaotic? Good. I mean, you know what, though? That's an important thing. I'm really lagging on this, actually, because I do think that when new platforms evolve, there is a good case to be made for like, even if you never intend to use it, like I never intend to be at Slow and Steady on Instagram, but I have like a couple different iterations of that handle because if I'm not using it, I don't want some next Slow and Steady studio to be using it, right? So there is something to be said that and this again also like doesn't really, if you are running like a very small solo service-based bookkeeping business that gets all of your business from relationships, like is this your number one priority? Perhaps not. But if you are a much more online brand, if you're much more visible, if you are planning to grow your brand much bigger, if you use a personal brand where it's your name and your name, you know, people know Amanda Laird, right? And so for me, it is important to own those handles.
Yeah, if we have desires for like greater visibility, we can, or perhaps even should also consider just like misrecognition or like who could show up as us in a space. And as we're going to get to with, I think, our next big shift in the social media landscape, as fact checking and content moderation become things of the past, it may be more and more important to make sure there aren't just like trolls or bots showing up as us on these platforms. That could be like a real concern in this year or in the future. So tell me about what's happening with Meta and some recent choices they've made around fact checking and how you think that will impact social media in 2025.
Yeah. Okay. So this announcement was made like less than 24 hours ago.
Yeah, very recent.
We're talking. So this is brand new. A lot of these changes haven't been rolled out yet. So who knows? And I think we have a pretty good sense because Meta is kind of step for step using the X playbook here, right? So the announcement is that they are eliminating fact checkers and they are, I think that the term was restoring freedom of expression. And I mean, I think it's also important to underscore that they said this in partnership with President you-know-who. And so, like, this is most certainly bending the knee. And so Mark Zuckerberg straight up admitted that we're going to see more bad things on Meta platform. I didn't get so deep into it. Like, are they talking about Instagram as well as...
Yeah, it's meant to be Facebook and Instagram. I haven't seen direct mention of Threads, but it feels so Instagram connected to me that I assume that it's also included. And some of the language, yeah, that language of like restoring the freedom of expression. There was also this emphasis on so that quote unquote innocent people don't get blocked anymore. And it's so coded like they're doing us all a favor. And I know plenty of creators that I adore who have been shadow banned, who have had their accounts blocked. But I just want to be clear that I don't think Mark is talking about protecting their freedom of expression or not blocking their accounts, right? Like it's definitely, again, it's very like dog whistle language speaking directly to the agenda of our incoming president and what they mean when they say freedom of speech, not what I think of or the people I care about might desire when we want freedom of speech.
Yeah. Absolutely. They also said they're bringing back political content. And one of the things that I found to be just so blasphemous in this announcement was that they what they said what they said was that they got rid of political content because they heard that it was making people feel bad. And it was like, no, I think it's because that political content that was being published on these platforms was interfering with democracy. Like, I actually think that that's the reason why political content was, deprioritized, not because I felt bad. So what does this mean? I mean, I think it's going to be a lot like Twitter and the de-evolution that we saw there that led to the mass exodus there. I just think it's going to become a Wild West for trolls and Nazis and misogynists, and it's just going to get harder and harder to cut through that noise, to actually find what you want, to stay connected with what you want. We're probably going to see much more stuff in our feeds that we just don't want to be seeing. And like, my visceral response was, well, I'm deleting my Facebook. And like, I don't use Facebook except to receive invitations to Christmas dinner from my family and to update the school council community group about pizza day. Like, that's kind of how I use Facebook. But I was just like, no, we can find another volunteer to do that. And if I never get invited to Christmas dinner again, well, at least I'll sleep easy at night.
That's so interesting to me, though, because what I'm hearing you say is like the only reason you were even on Facebook is because it had these actually like clear social functions for you in your real life. But now you're no longer willing to put yourself in this place. Like, you have to go to this horrible place to have that social function. And you're like, I'm not willing to do this anymore. We're going to find a different way.
And even then, I use a Chrome plugin, a newsfeed eradicator, that actually serves me up an inspirational quote instead of my news feed.
Yeah.
And I still hate going there every time. And I don't use the app.
It's just an increasingly hostile environment. And I think we will just see it being and feeling more and more hostile, both on Facebook and Instagram as we move through 2025.
I'm really disappointed that this announcement was made, because one of my Q1 goals actually was to fuck around on Threads a little bit and see what was going to happen. And of course, I signed up on the day that it just went right into the toilet. So, interesting. Showed up at the party late.
Yeah.
Just as it's closing down.
I feel like more and more what we're seeing with social media, I mean, I think this has always been true, but the pace is accelerating of something new launches. Some people get in on it early. It's just like an early adopter culture, right? You get in early, your audience magically grows really fast. And then it's more people come in and that's not available to them. And then it just creates this wave of unrealistic expectations for what might happen for you there, and then disappointment. And then people start selling their tried and true secrets for how to be successful somewhere. And then, of course, as soon as you've been able to figure out what's tried and true, it's never going to work for anybody else. And we just go through this cycle over and over again. And of course, we saw this on Facebook, we saw this on Instagram, but I just feel like it used to be you had a couple years to get in. And now it's oh, you're not in the first 6 months, the first 3 months? Good luck. I don't know. What are you going to move on to? And I think that, again, it's just pair that for business owners with the just generally hostile environment that makes us feel bad as human beings and people trying to navigate these spaces. I just think it's why there's such a widespread sentiment of people don't want to be on social media this year and anymore. And I mean, secretly thrilled to see that hitting the mainstream. I'm yes, friends, we can, do other things with our time. We can be together in different ways. And we haven't even brought into this the news that I really think a lot of people had coming into this year around the potential TikTok ban, which I was seeing a lot of people talk about going into effect in January. My take on that is that Trump has essentially said he's like less interested in this agenda. And so people are less concerned it's actually going to happen. But before that happened, we definitely saw a lot of TikTok creators trying to get their audiences going to other places. A lot of them signed up for Substack or they were sending people to Instagram. I'm curious, what's your take on the potential TikTok ban, Amanda?
Yeah, I agree with you that like it doesn't seem to be as much of a priority anymore. And like a TikTok ban, from my understanding and as I understand it, didn't mean that it was going to be like you will never be able to go on TikTok again. And in fact, my understanding is that it had a lot more to do with some of the social selling and like the shop tools. And that's where it would be affected more so than just, being able to do the like Charlie XCX dance on TikTok. And so again, question, is TikTok Shop like a core piece of your revenue strategy? Yes, no, right? Like that's going to kind of be your litmus test for how much you should be freaking out about this. We were kind of chatting before we started this call, and I think that this is a conversation that you and I have had many times in many different ways over the years, personally and in public, is like what I think the take-home message for all of this is like, don't put all your eggs in the social media basket, right? Like you do not own your TikTok account, your Facebook account, your whatever, even Blue Sky, okay? Like, yes, the CEO is a woman, but you still do not own your account or your audience or your content when you're there, right? And so for small businesses, like this is the soup that we are stewing in here, right? Is that we play in a landscape that changes year to year, month to month, now week to week, right? It has always been that way on social media. It will continue to always be that way. And so use social media or not, but I think that there's real danger in just putting all your eggs into that basket. I think we're preaching to the choir on this podcast. I don't think that this is like revolutionary to folks that are listening to Off the Grid.
We're like 90 episodes into our social media skepticism here. So.
Exactly. But should you need a reminder to have a website and an email list that you own and that you can export and back up every so often is definitely good practice, and especially now.
Yeah, absolutely. So our TLDR on all these big shifts in the social media landscape is don't put all of your eggs in any social media basket, or don't spread yourself out across a bunch of social media and think you've necessarily diversified. It's still social media. And with a quick Googling, I will just amend our TikTok ban discussion. So apparently what could happen in the US as soon as January 19th is people can no longer download the app. So they will have to remove it from app stores. That has not been approved. That is not necessarily happening. There is a Supreme Court hearing happening, I think, as we record this and this episode comes out. So if you're listening from the future, you will know what happened. We do not currently know what happened. Even when this goes live, the world won't know what happened yet. But so it will be broader than simply shop, but it also wouldn't necessarily prevent users who already have the app from using it, which is, from what I can see, almost 200 million people in the US. So there's a lot of layers here for what could happen. But again, it's still just like, where are you gathering people for your business? Like, where do you want your community to live? And can we help make that happen in a space that you get to decide the terms and the rules, and you get to set the community agreements for all of, your people there? So that's what's on the landscape in the social media space. And of course, if you need resources for stepping back away from those platforms, as I mentioned, Off the Grid has over 90 episodes for you now to help you consider what you might want to do next. And, as I always say, like, I'm not here to sell you one solution to this. You get to pick what comes after social media for you or alongside social media for you. I have a lot of different ideas and options. So you can look through the archives for new and exciting and creative and fun ideas. Hi, Off the Grid listeners. Amelia here, interrupting our conversation today because I want to share with you one of my favorite marketing tools. When I left Instagram, I invited all of my followers to subscribe to my mailing list in order to keep in touch with me. And I promised to send them monthly-ish notes on a lot of the themes I used to talk about on social media. I've used many email service providers in my day, but my favorite of all of them is Flowdesk. Flowdesk is a gorgeous, easy-to-use email service provider. It helps you create beautiful, thoughtful emails, and even better, it's really set up to help you create easy-to-use landing pages so people can join your list, and workflows so you can automate sending messages to folks who sign up through different pages. Flowdesk is how I run all of the welcome sequences and lead magnets at Softer Sounds. It's also how I run the Leaving Social Media toolkit that you might have downloaded after listening to this podcast. I'm surely not sending those emails out myself manually. Flowdesk is doing all of that auto-magically. If you'd like to give Flowdesk a try, please use my affiliate link below in the show notes. You'll get a discount, I'll get a kickback, and we will all send more beautiful emails together. Again, check out the affiliate link in the show notes. For now, we're going to get back to this episode of Off the Grid. Let me take us into our third trend to chat about. This is a topic that comes up on the podcast so much. People want to talk about this service all the time, and that is Substack. Amanda, what do you see for Substack in the year ahead?
Oh, what a question. I have so many thoughts and opinions about Substack, and I swear that half of my business is talking people off of a ledge of Substack. And I have joked about starting this a quarterly support group where, okay, if you're like, this is it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to start a Substack. You can come to the group, and we'll be like, no.
The anti-Substack support group. Yes, we love it.
I mean, all that to say, I love Substack, actually.
All that to say, I subscribe to over 100 newsletters on Substack right now.
Yeah, I have a $60 a month bill for all my Substack subscriptions. What can I say? I am who I am. I used to spend $60 a month on magazines. Now it's Substack. Okay, so Substack, the too long didn't read version of that is when Substack first emerged, it was really this simple tool, and the promise was monetize your long form content, and it was kind of like a platform for writers and readers.
And it was essentially a newsletter tool. It helped you send emails, and it would also post them at a web link where you could send the link to people.
Exactly. And it was kind of like blogging again. And certainly even today, when I think about some of the Substacks that I read and subscribe to and pay for, really remind me of the glory days of blogs, right? Oh, it's a good place to be. R.I.P. Google Reader. I will never get over that sunset. So that was kind of the promise. And now as Substack has grown, as Substack wants more of your time and more of your attention, because reminder, that's how we pay for free tools with our attention and our eyeballs. I just feel like Substack, and I mean, this isn't my unique take. We all can see how Substack is becoming more and more like a social media platform, right? There's notes. Now there's chats. They're really prioritizing video, long and short form video, right? That's a huge part of this next phase of Substack. So what I have started to notice is people who were like, oh, well, I came to Substack because I didn't want to be on social media. I wanted deeper thoughts, more long-term content. Now I just feel like I'm on social media again. Last night after I took a shower, I ended up on my bed in a towel for 45 minutes on Substack notes. And I was like, shit, it's happening. That wasn't supposed to be Substack, what Substack was for, what we all thought, right? So there are a couple of things now that are happening as a result of this. I think people are now looking for alternatives to Substack, right? People who want that email, like that simple tool for just sending long emails with a web link, right, are now looking to other places. Or, I mean, Substack as well, there's been a long history of Substack's questionable politics and policies and who they freedom of expression on the platform and who they may or may not censor or allow on the platform. And so some people have long said, Substack doesn't align with my values. I don't want to be there. I don't want to give them my time or my money. And so now I'm starting to hear about alternatives, right? So we're seeing Ghost is one, Beehive was another. I also think, ConvertKit, which was really a leader in email marketing. And I think you've done an episode or two on the difference between email marketing and newsletters.
Yes, absolutely.
Important distinction, right? Like ConvertKit was really a leader when it came to email marketing, right? Very robust tools for automations and segmentation. And like you could do all kinds of cool things in ConvertKit. And I have started to notice over the last couple of years that, well, first of all, they rebranded from ConvertKit. So they're really kind of deprioritizing or decentering this conversion piece, right? So using email marketing as a sales tool to more of a creator platform. So they've rebranded as Kit. And they also created like their creators network, and they're kind of promising some of that same like organic awareness building and that organic discovery that Substack at one point was really good for as well. So I'm just curious to see now there's going to be more options. So currently I'm not paying for any Beehives or Ghosts newsletters, but maybe this time next year I will be, right? Like what does that mean for our dollars too, as we're spreading things out?
Yeah, I'm very intrigued to see how this goes. I feel like I have definitely seen some of the Substack early adopters move to other platforms for exactly the reasons that you're mentioning. They're not interested in the sort of social media-fication of Substack. I loved how you put it in your newsletter, like Substack's slow and steady descent from newsletter into all-purpose social media platform. Mm-hmm. Like that definitely feels like what is happening. There have also been some controversial moments around the lack of content moderation on Substack. We saw an Atlantic piece last year about Nazis on Substack. More recently, Substack had partnered with Barry Weiss's platform, The Free Press, and that was another like real values misalignment for a lot of creators that I know and got them to look at other options or move away from the platform. So definitely, I think part of what's happening is the company is, just showing themselves to be a VC-funded tech company. I think in the beginning, when they sold themselves as a platform for writers, a lot of people read into that it would like be a values-laden statement. And the value is just they want to make their money and the money they need to make to please their investors. Like, that's it. And that comes with all the problems that we see with every other platform. And, Substack has an app that they are really pushing users to be on now. And there are a lot of perks and things you can only get through the app. And I'm just noticing more and more they're trying to move their users there. And in my opinion, I definitely see some people talk about how like Substack is still, a small fish and like we don't really need to be worried about this. But according to their website right now, they have over 35 million active subscribers, and I think that will only grow in 2025. I think we're going to see more adoption of Substack, and it's going to continue to feel more and more like social media. If I dare to make one prediction, which I hate predicting things because I'm never right, I feel like by this time next year, we will have seen Substack do something to monetize in a way other than paid subscriptions. Because that's going to have to change for them. If they're going to keep making money, they're going to have to start doing something that's not just when writers get paid, we get paid. Now, of course, that's a big step away from their ethos. Maybe that won't happen in 2025, but I think it's coming. whether it's 2025 or not. And I think it very well could be this year. We'll start to see ads, or we'll start to see different types of brand partnerships that they'll do. They're just going to need a new and different way to make money at a certain point.
Yeah, I think you're right. And as Substack becomes much more mainstream, regardless of what is happening on these other platforms, I do think that means that brands are going to start to work Substack into their own strategies, right? So is it some type of platform advertising that maybe we're going to see, right? Already, I think sponsored content, as creators move from these other platforms onto Substack, as they start to have really big, followings, that's where the influences are. That's where you're being influenced. The brands are right behind there, right? And so sponsored content, Substacks that are brought to you by, right? Like, I think a couple of years ago, and I actually thought that this was kind of cool, to be honest, was like MailChimp did like a series of podcasts. So not just talking about the infamous MailChimp ads, right? But they had some of their own content. And actually, Anne Friedman had an incredible podcast that was brought to you by MailChimp, right? But now are we going to start to see, I don't know,
do we have our first brand that launches its own Substack newsletter this year?
Yeah.
Maybe in a very fun, clever marketing kind of way. Does the Duolingo bird launch a Substack this year?
Yeah,
right? Something like that.
I was actually thinking the Breakfast Diaries, like the Breakfast Club, or the Breakfast Diaries by General Mills. Where we're talking about cereal. I don't know. I think all of this is a possibility. If you work for any of those brands or at agencies and you use those ideas, please give us money.
Yeah. we have ideated it here for you, but it was not free. So yeah, I think I'm on the same train of thought with you about the directions that Substack is heading. And I think what it means for our online business owners, our small business owners, our creatives, artists, writers tuning into this, what it means for you, dear Off the Grid listener. It's not necessarily that you shouldn't start a Substack if that's what you want to do. Notice that I call it a Substack now. It's more than just a newsletter. You are associating yourself with that company and their brand and all of the expectations they're going to bring to you for your newsletter. I think that's just important to know. If you go launch a newsletter in MailChimp or Kit or Flowdesk, they're just providing tools that you can use in the ways you want to use. What I've noticed being on the Substack platform is they're really pushing you to monetize it because that's how they get paid. They're really highlighting specific metrics. They're really inviting you to do video. I'm seeing more and more of that in my back end on the platform lately. So just know that there's more of an agenda, I think, that Substack has for how we use it if you're going there as a creator. And also, I just wouldn't go there with any illusion that it's going to bring you a bunch of discoverability. That's definitely something Substack was promising. They're saying that you will find a whole new audience here that's excited and ready for you. And then you can easily monetize your newsletter and there will be all these people who are just ready to pay for it. And I just don't think that's true at this point on the platform. And so if you're going there from the sense of I want easy discoverability because it's not easy on social media anymore. Where is it easy? In my opinion, the answer is just it's not easy anywhere.
Exactly.
It's just not. And if you go somewhere and it is easy, that's beautiful, but it also means you probably don't own it or it's temporary or it's fleeting. And this is definitely me on my soapbox. Nothing beats relationships that you have quote unquote built by hand, the ones that you are actually in relationship with people. Those are, I think, still the most important asset for any business, not to put it in a weird financial term, but the people we know and how we take care of each other and how we show up for each other, whether they are our clients, our peers, our colleagues, whatever it may be. I just think that's what makes businesses successful and sustainable over time. And easy discoverability doesn't give you that.
I agree. You literally took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say the exact same thing. Unless, here's the thing. If your business model is selling the secrets of going on Substack, you will show up because I get that. That is a lot of what is in my feed, right? And it's interesting because I am a content consumer on Substack In the summertime, I did get so far as to register a Substack. And so I didn't do anything with it. And, I did share in my email marketing newsletter, my process of discernment of how I got there and then all the way back around again, which happy to share that with anybody who's interested in that process. So I'm curious if maybe this is showing up in my Substack notes algorithm.
It's definitely in mine too, for what it's worth.
Because I'm just like, yeah, you should start the Substack. Here's how you can get more followers. Here's what you can do. And like, of course, those are the people who are going to be making, 6 figures on Substack because they are snake oil salesmen.
Yeah.
Right?
Anybody who sells secrets and easy steps to success. I mean, and hey, like I get it. Like life is hard, work is hard, business is hard, the world is hard. Like, do I want things to be easy? Absolutely. I'm not here to demonize that desire. It feels like a relief when someone says to you, like, this can be easy. But I think, again, what I just returned to time and time again is like what actually makes things easy is having that community that we can trust fall into, that we can support and be supported by. And also time. Like it just takes time. And while there are certainly creators out there whose work and fortunes will disprove what I'm saying here, right? Like they went viral and made millions. Hawk to a Girl is out there. I understand that happens for a select few. But I think for most of us who just want to be centered in our innate skills and the creative things that we make, like it's just not the bet we need to take. Like we need to bet on ourselves, but not on these social media platforms that are promising something viral.
Yeah, I agree. There are tons of examples that are contrary to this conversation of literal overnight successes or whatever. But the reality of that is you can't like engineer that. You can't plan for that. You don't know, right? And I loved the episode that you shared, on, I think, the Clubhouse episode where you're sharing your behind the scenes of how you got on the We Can Do Hard Things podcast, right? There's just nothing that exists in the universe where you could have put that all together, right? I was having this exact same conversation with a client yesterday where it was like, just do the thing, whatever the next step is, whatever the thing is, and don't hold so tightly to the outcome because whatever you think is going to happen isn't, and you cannot come up with what the result is. Like, it's just impossible.
When I started Off the Grid, I really thought it was going to be a thing I did for like 8 episodes and it was over. And here we are. It's become like the biggest contribution of my career so far. And that was certainly not the plan. And it's led to so much delight and so many other things. There have been other things in my life, when I like got a PhD where I was like, this is the thing that will change my life. And it has had, in a certain way, zero impact on so much of what I'm doing. We just can't know. And I also think about, the movie from last year, Megalopolis, right? There we have a director holding so tightly to getting this thing made. And it was a total flop. And it was like critically panned, audience panned, like we can't know. And I think for me, the lesson I took away from that is like, one, sometimes you have to create it anyway, even if it's going to flop, even if nobody else is going to like it but you. Like sometimes as a creator or an artist, like following your vision is the most important thing you can do, even if the result is not at all what you wanted. And also sometimes maybe you should have just let it go earlier. Maybe there were signs along that path that this was not what needed to be created. And we have to learn from those lessons as well. So yeah, I feel like there are just a lot of lessons in this conversation we've had around the social media landscape and Substack that just remind me that like no tool or app is what is going to transform your business. It's like getting to the heart of your work and doing it well and sharing it in public somehow. Like that's what I think we just have to keep experimenting with and iterating on over and over and over again and seeing where that takes us. So I love all of this. And I want to take us to our 4th trend to wrap us up. So this actually feels like it speaks a lot to how much I have just been like hammering home relationships in this conversation. But the fourth trend that you have kind of forecasted for us is that there's going to be a lot more happening IRL. We're going to see more in-person events, experiences, etc. So, Amanda, could you share a little bit more with us about what you see for the IRL-ness for small business owners in 2025?
On the list, this is the one that I'm like most excited about because just like personally, I'm like, ooh, where am I going to go in real life in 2025? I mean, okay, so it is 2025. We have been inside for 5 years,
Yeah.
right? Which I have loved, actually. I have worked from home exclusively since 2016, so I like it here. But we're seeing many more return to work mandates. Amazon just announced that their corporate offices are, at least here in Canada, I don't know if it's everywhere, is like 5 days a week. There is no more flexible hybrid remote options, right? And so people are going to work, which means people are going out, which means people are downtown, people are back in the office parks, people are on transit. So I definitely think that a lot of that stuff that, fell away because of lockdown and the pandemic, and as more people were working from home, even like simple stuff like brand activations, like giving out like free samples of granola bars at the subway station. Like, I just think that we're going to see much more of that because marketing goes where the people are, to quote Ariel, the Little Mermaid.
Yeah. I saw some reporting on this last year too, kind of around like Gen Z culture and also like the re-emergence of standing in line and waiting for like product drops was like a big thing in 2024. And I think we will see more of that. And it's just like people wanting to be excited about things together in person. And, for small business owners, I think that can really be, to me, like an exciting permission slip to just like try to get to people together in your local spaces. Can you organize a meetup at a coffee shop? Can you like host a launch party for something that you're doing and invite a bunch of people? Can you, bring people together IRL? And if your business is not set up for that, or if you're not someone who can join IRL gatherings, or if you're like concerned about, I still think there are definitely very real COVID concerns. And I also think something else I'm seeing that I think comes from this same trend, but is happening online is like people I'm just noticing are loving these like tight knit, tiny gatherings, like smaller online spaces, more intimate spaces, opportunities to really show up together, get to know each other in these really beautiful, like I'm seeing like virtual retreats that are capped at 4 or 5 people, places where we're actually committing to showing up. I'm noticing more community agreements around like when you sign up for this, you commit to be there. You're not watching the recording, you're coming live,
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing this like IRL trend show up in our online spaces as well in ways that I really find interesting and exciting as somebody who loves to hold online space and really help people get to know each other.
Oh, 100%. Like, listen, my first website was Amanda's Page of Stuff on Angel Fire. Okay. I have been online for a long time. I love it here. Right. And, last year, at the beginning of the year, I attended a local business meetup. So shout out to Laura Jean, who is the founder of the Ladies Creative Collaboration Society. I think that's what she called it. And she was hosting these in-person networking business events. You got to meet people, you got to introduce yourself, pitch your business. And then we did screen printing all together.
So fun.
And it was the first time that I had been in the world representing Slow and Steady, because Slow and Steady launched in 2022. That was still pretty deep into pandemic time, like lockdowns and staying at home. And like Slow and Steady existed entirely online, which is fine because, like I said, I love it here. But also, I have never wanted to run an online business. And I know you've talked a little bit about like, what is an online business, yada, yada, yada. And so to me, there was something about being in the real world, representing my business, talking about my business, identifying as a business owner, that really shifted something within me, because now I wasn't just playing business on the internet. You know, I was really embodying this identity as an entrepreneur and as a business owner. And I am a marketing and business strategist and an advisor. This is what I do. This is who I am. That shifted everything. And okay, admittedly, I never went out again for the rest of the year. Okay.
One and done. But it mattered. It was one really impactful experience.
Yeah. And so it really moved the needle even in my online interactions, right? And so from the small business owner's perspective, right? Like, and I think what you said is important. Like, if you are able and desiring, that IRL connection, I think it's really important. Now, the funny thing is like, once you start going to these meetups and creating these things, well, now you need to get found. So now you need Google My Business. And now you need to be thinking about search engine optimization. But as people in our businesses, I think in 2025, I think it's really important for our mental health as entrepreneurs, for our hearts and our souls and our business relationship, for it to be embodied and to our businesses to exist offline. Even if that is just you going to one in-person networking event. I got no business from that event. I got no clients, no collaborators, nothing. I have an amazing tote bag that says "Fuck the Patriarchy" that I screen printed myself. But that, like, personal experience. So I think there's something to be said there. One of the things I wrote in my newsletter too is that the ultimate AI resistance is
having a body.
Having a body.
In space.
Right? And so as we see more AI, as we see this differentiation between podcasting done by real humans versus robots, right? Like, the ultimate way to have a real experience is to be offline.
Yeah. I can even think of, in my own life, some of the differences between the online and offline community building and networking I do. Like, I was realizing recently that when I lived in Chicago, I went to events all the time. Basically, how I built my community there was going to events and hosting events. That is what I did. I was always out meeting people, being in the city, hosting stuff. The first time I got to co-host an event at the Ace Hotel was like one of the highlights of my 20s. Like, so I was fancy. Like, oh, I made it. So, like that was such a core part of how I built my community. And, I can remember people that came to like one event that I hosted 7 years ago, but sometimes I can't remember somebody that I had a Zoom coffee date with 6 months ago. And some of that attribute to my own memory issues. But it also has to do with that being in personness, and that like we were in embodied space together. And I don't want to set up a sort of, hierarchy of like offline is better than online. It's not about that. They're just different. And I think that the quality of those experiences is different. And I think we will start seeing people be more and more thoughtful around like, does this experience I want to create belong online or belong offline? And how can I like choose the right environment for it? Because some things thrive online and some things don't. And we can really start to, I think, be more intentional as we step into space together. And we can start to also seek out the spaces that we want and need. And I think, again, like something I'm often saying here is that the most resilient businesses are the ones that have a more diverse ecosystem. That is true of the natural world and the business world. And so if you can have an ecosystem that involves both online and offline connections, your business is less just sort of susceptible to struggle when we see all of these shifts and changes in the online marketing space, especially. So this could be a really fun year to try to integrate, like you did, Amanda, literally going to one in-person event. Maybe you go to one meetup, or maybe this is the year you finally go to an industry conference and you mask up and you take care of yourself and you figure it out while you're there. Like, I think that there are ways that we can invite ourselves, if we've had like primarily online businesses, to step into IRL experiences as our business owner selves. And also, I just want to take a minute to like shout out and applaud all of the business owners who I know listen to this podcast and run primarily in-person businesses.
Yes.
Whether that be like you have a shop or you have a consulting practice that is totally through all your local connections. Like, the siren song of online business does not have to woo you. Like, if you can rock it in person and that's working for you, like, I want to highlight and applaud that, because I do think those businesses are so often built on relationships with real people who live in your local community, and that brings you a lot of like resilience through your network.
Fun fact, my friend and collaborator, Florence, who runs an SEO agency, actually does most, if not all, of her marketing by one-on-one networking.
Of course.
In real life. That's how we met. We met through an online group, and she reached out and was like, oh, I think, we'd probably have some good synergy. And when I looked up her business address was literally a 3-minute walk from my house. And so I was like, let's have coffee. And that's how we met. And we ended up working together on many projects throughout last year. And that is like how all of her business is built, which is fascinating.
Yeah, it is. Even when her whole service she offers is so online oriented, her business itself functions through these in-person relationships. I love this. It's a great mix, right? It's both and. So, Amanda, this has been a delight, but I feel like I have to wrap us up. Is there anything else you wanted to add there before we sign off?
I just wanted to say that one thing about in-person is like, I do think marketing budgets will be shrinking, especially for bigger brands. So I'm not sure what that means, right? Like the big fancy wine and dine, like really luxury experience. Is that what we're going to be seeing? That I don't know. I'm interested to see. And as people have less money to spend or are less willing to spend money.
Yeah. More scrappy, little fun upstart events. I mean, that's my favorite kind. Give me like a DIY vibe any day. Literally, that's all I want. So beautiful. I love all of this. Amanda, thank you so much for joining us to talk about these 2025 marketing trends. I feel like we gave people a ton to digest and think about and be really creative with how they choose to implement these things or not in their business throughout 2025. If folks want to stay connected with you and get more amazing emails like the one I got that led to this whole episode, how can they stay in touch with you in Slow and Steady?
Yeah, please visit my website, slowandsteady.studio. Sign up for my newsletter. I send it every Friday. And once a month, I host totally free mini trainings, roundtables, discussions. Come hang out with me in the Zoom room, kind of IRL.
Beautiful. We love it. Well, thank you again, Amanda. Thank you, dear listeners, for staying tuned and joining us for this episode. I hope you enjoyed all of season 5, our 5 episodes in 5 days experiment. I will see you another time, I think in a few weeks / months here on the pod feed. Stay tuned. But until then, we look forward to seeing you off the grid. Thanks for listening to Off the Grid. Don't forget to grab your free Leaving Social Media toolkit at offthegrid.fun/toolkit. This podcast is a Softer Sounds production. Our music is by Melissa Caitlin Carter of Making Audio Magic, and our logo is by Natelier Studio. I'm your host, Amelia Ruby, and until next time, I'll see you off the grid and on the interweb.
Let's go off the grid. Okay. Let's go off the grid. Okay. I know that you really want to put your phone